Okay, so as we are waiting still for people to come in on the webinar, I'll do some housekeeping here. So there's a Q&A feature for leaving questions during the talk, and we'll try to monitor the questions as they come in, but in the end we have a dedicated session for them going through all the questions as they have come. And if you have any comments while we are talking here, you can use the chat feature that's enabled. So just leave comments, if you want to talk about use cases that you've seen that are exciting, just drop them in the comments. And if you don't see it while we're talking, we're gonna have this as a recording, so we'll know later and can go through them as well. And the recording and the slides will be shared after the presentation via email, so you'll have them for later reference. So actually, we have pretty good participation here. So I think Tom, we could just kick it off 2 minutes over the mark. So welcome everyone. This is a Semaphore AI webinar about AI agent use cases. And I'm Antti Karjalainen. I'm one of the co-founders of Semaphore. And here with me, I have Tom Benton.
Hey, everybody, I'm Tom Benton, also at Semaphore. I lead up our design partner program, which has been a great role where I've gotten to work with all of our early customers as they're building some of their first agentic type use cases and pushing those across the enterprise. So it's great to be here today, Antti.
Great. Tom will be able to tell us all about the details about the conversations that he's had with the customers, early customers that we had around these use cases. So good. And people might know me here also from my background at Robocop. I was the co-founder, CEO of Robocop that then later turned into Semaphore here. So good. So in terms of the agenda, we're going to go through a brief introduction to AI agents for those who are not familiar with the concept yet. And then we're going to discuss how enterprises are currently approaching implementing agents and what the different strategies there look like. And then we dive into the use cases themselves and do a hands-on demo with one, and then leave some time for the Q&A in the end. And so to kick off, I collected some recent headlines here about AI agents, enterprise AI agents, and ranging from McKinsey and Company to World Economic Forum to Gartner. I think there's a big consensus in the industry building that AI agents are going to be a huge thing for the enterprise specifically. We were lucky enough to be covered at Gartner's recent hype cycle on the future of enterprise applications as one of the vendors included in the AI agent category. And so we, of course, naturally at Semaphore, being a company focused on this, we really believe that AI agents are going to be the killer app of the AI era, or specifically the GenAI era. We've all seen the ChatGPT moment come and to some degree go, and people are asking, where's the value? There's a lot of investment going into the chips, into the infrastructure, but what's going to drive the value? What are going to be the killer use cases? We are saying that agents are going to unlock those for us. And agents will fundamentally define or redefine enterprise applications and change how work gets done in the enterprise. So to start off with defining an agent, all agents are computer programs, but all programs are not agents. That's one way to say it. So what makes it unique? The unique fact about an agent is that it can decide and plan for its own actions and then go and execute that. So agent has that agency, the ability to take action or to choose what action to take to achieve a particular outcome. That's really the key defining thing about an agent. And the agents, they are able to reason, so plan, understand the context that they're working in. They're fundamentally able to collaborate in natural language with human users. So the one wonderful thing about LLMs is that they really know how to work with language. And so that makes them great collaborators with human users. And then action is key to agents. The ability to take action, not just summarize a piece of text back to you or have a conversation, but actually take action in the real world based on your conversation. So those key things differentiate an agent from a regular software application or other type of AI apps. And one really key thing to know about agents or the way to think about agents is that you should think that an agent will do the work for you. So if you have a piece of work that needs to get done, a traditional software application or a chatbot would make you more efficient or effective at your job, while as the agent would actually complete that job altogether for you. So that's one way to think about it as well. And so here, Tom has been spending a lot of time talking with a lot of our customers, and we oftentimes hear like, well, how is this different from a chatbot? Oh, hey, I already have a copilot in here. So what's the difference? How would you, in your own words, Tom, summarize this?
Yeah, thanks, Santi. This is probably one of the first questions that comes up as we talk to our customers and the folks that are interested in looking at Semaphore. So the first thing that we like to really call out is that both the chatbots, copilots, a lot of these chat-based interfaces are great, right? And it's something that we use ourselves. But the difference is that with these copilots specifically, is there's really no plan that they have. So they try to do their best from a single shot or a single prompt. It's very difficult for them to get any external type of context or any type of customized context, because again, it's just pulling from its own set in its own corpus of data. So things like your own enterprise processes or like your own enterprise data are just not included. And then the last one, but probably most important, is that to get a lot of value out of it, you have to become basically a prompt engineer. So what's happening is we're seeing these businesses start to leverage these tools, which are again extremely powerful, and it's ones we use. But you just release it to a business user without much context, without much data, without much planning, you don't really have a lot of value. So this is just a comparison of just asking a simple question via like a chat-like interface to ChatGPT versus how we would approach talking to ChatGPT in the background via our platform and tooling, right? So we follow a plan. We get things like the recipient's name, what's the title. We use context of what's our internal messaging, what's the brand message we use. We also can go out and search and make that more personalized based on the internal and external data and mash that up to create something that's very compelling. So this is just one example of what we do in terms of agents versus copilots.
Yeah, that's great. And we've seen the wave of copilots and chatbots come now, and a lot of times when I talk to folks in the enterprise, they say, yeah, we deployed them. Well, what's the return on investment? Well, we really don't know. How many more percentages more effective did the people become? Like, I think in software development, there's a big consensus brewing that yes, these things are very powerful, um, and it's sort of becoming a no-brainer. But when you give a knowledge worker a copilot, we really don't know how much impact that actually brings. And so those initiatives kind of drift off in the background, while as agents, I think the big key will be the thing that I mentioned here earlier, is that they actually complete a piece of work that you can assign a value to, and you can really measure the impact of an agent. So that kind of inherently makes it easier to quantify as well. And so to move forward here, when we talk about agents, the typical perception is that you always have a conversation with an AI app these days. There's always a chat. Now, that's a powerful paradigm, of course, but sometimes you just want to make sure that, or just want to have the agent do the work for you and really don't care to have a conversation about that. So we split the agents that we build and we work on in two categories. And I think this will become the norm in the industry as others figure this out as well. On the one hand side, there's worker agents. These are agents that are working tirelessly in the background 24/7, crunching through documents, completing work items on their own. And then if they bump into some issue along the way, they might reach out to a human user for guidance. And then there's the conversational agents that you engage with a chat always to initiate a piece of work. Now, these are, of course, kind of interchangeable, as a worker agent can become a conversational interface if it needs a human help somewhere along the way. But this is a good distinction to make. Not all agents are conversational in a way where you need to constantly be interacting and working together with them. And here's a screenshot actually of a worker agent completing its work and requiring human assistance. And so to really quickly touch on strategies of how enterprises are looking to implement agents and how they are fundamentally enabling the use cases, you know, really agents are going to be this big value creation moment for a lot of enterprises. I think personally it's the size of an opportunity, kind of an opportunity the size of the internet. Fundamentally it'll change everything. It's not going to be a 1 year change. It'll roll through like 5 to 10 years, and then we look back and say, wow, I couldn't believe working without an agent or without 100 or 1,000 agents on my side. But it'll happen gradually. But the value creation is going to be tremendous. The complexity of the work that we can address through these agents are just going to grow over time. And so we kind of contrast it here with ERPs coming in the 90s to business process management to RPA, automation, big data, cloud. Those are all big value creators, but we think that agents are going to be on another magnitude here. And really to jump on this opportunity, I think every enterprise out there will need to have a dedicated AI agent strategy to seize the moment.
Yeah, and like on the slide, I remember this is something that we had talked a lot about on T, and it's something I get reminded about in all the customer conversations is, especially with my background being in big data with yours and RPA, that we were able to do things with RPA that did create a lot of value. We were able to build tools, we were able to build the data platforms on the big data side that did incredible new things like sentiment analysis at scales that were previously not even thought possible. When you look at those use cases now, though, just like we had talked about in some of the customer cases we're working on, we have this technology that can go well above and beyond. And it really is a paradigm shift and super exciting time to see the things we can accomplish now with these LLMs and these generative AI types of technologies.
Absolutely. So the way I like to think about sort of approaching agents right now, if you are an enterprise decision maker, there's a lot of point solutions out there. So I like to think about this in terms of who is it for? Is it for the developer? Is it for the business users? What kind of work does it actually do? So is it very predefined, well-defined work, or something more custom to your business? So on the left-hand side, we have the point solutions, which would be a SDR agent or a marketing agent or a customer support agent that can handle certain types of customer support scenarios. Get the agent integrated into your systems, put it to work, great. And then developer frameworks we've all seen. There's a lot of them. A lot of them are fast moving. A lot of the hyperscalers have their own. So that's something where you deploy a set of developers and engineers to build custom solutions. Typically, these would be applied to your own product. But when we actually want to solve a business problem, starting from a developer framework is kind of a long shot in my view. You have to build a lot of stuff around it to make it viable. So that's why we categorize on the top right enterprise agent solutions, which allow you to create custom work for business users without having to do all the coding of a developer framework, but still have the flexibility over point solutions. So this is something you might want to think when you're thinking about strategies to start implementing AI agents. We've seen a lot of people starting with developers first because there hasn't been any business user facing solutions so far. And so when you think about an enterprise AI agent solution, these might be some things that you want to consider. There's a lot of items here, so I won't list them through every single one of them, but you want to be able to connect to all the data that you have in the enterprise in different silos. You want to be able to connect to all your business applications, whether that's an SAP application, Oracle application, or Microsoft Dynamics, or kind of you name it. You want the agents to meet the business where they are instead of having to go through a huge re-architecture project around the agents. And then we've experienced that document intelligence, being able to understand a lot of complex unstructured documents is really in the center of a lot of agentic use cases that we have started to uncover here. So that is a common thread, and that's something that you should consider when planning for a strategy to approach agents. And then last item here is really the security governance aspects, being able to command and control multiple agents and eventually hundreds of agents. But right now people are really struggling, or well, not struggling, but anxious to get from 0 to 1. So there's not much talk about scaling yet, but that will come, probably next year as we have a lot more people deploying the 10th agent or the 20th agent in production. But right now it's really about getting the first agent to production, and that's kind of the race that's on right now, and that's this year's challenge. And so jumping into the actual use cases themselves, let's leave the tech talk here in the background. There's separate webinars that I'm probably gonna host about the technology, how you design agents, how you build them, all that. But here, let's just focus on the use case and not so much as how they are getting built. So Tom, I'll turn it over to you. Based on your experience working with customers, what have you seen being kind of the criteria of good use cases?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I think so. As we step through some of these, I'll try to share some examples. So, the first one we see is things that are working through a process that's continuously processing data, or something that's regularly scheduled. So it could be, I'd like to go ahead and research this list of prospects for some folks that are looking to do some type of outbound campaigning or outreach. It could be things that we constantly have these transactions that are being processed. We need to look at those against different levels of or different levels to determine if it was fraudulent or not. So those types of continuous processes are really key for some of these agentic type of workflows we're seeing, and they do really, really well at it. The second one is, like you had mentioned before, it's important to be able to measure the work, because just as important as when we assign the work to the agent, we want to be able to ensure that it's doing the work properly, and that when it does run into an exception case, that we get that flagged immediately, so we can go ahead and put that back into the run bit, put that back into the agent, which actually goes back and starts to improve the process as well. And we're starting to see that at our customers. The third one is that you need a clearly defined end-to-end process. So we all know, or at least I think a lot of us have heard about some of the limitations of LLMs, which are certainly there. So it's important to be able to have a clearly defined process that you can define from start to finish, to say, this is how I start to reconcile my invoice. These are the 4, 5, 6 things that I look for. Once I get those, then I do that, and so on and so forth, down through the end of that process. The fourth one is pretty interesting, and it's something that we found in almost every case that we've engaged on now, is that people have previously tried to automate this. And it wasn't just with RPA, but could have been with custom scripts. Could have been they tried to build a custom enterprise application. But what we're finding is there was a piece of ambiguity. There was some complexity, somewhat of a gray area around the use case that just eventually made the automations break. And so while some folks have been hesitant to try kind of yet another way to automate, they're finding with the agentic approach a lot of value in that, because we can handle that ambiguity, that complexity, with the various ways we call it to context and data. The fifth one is so being able to deal with both structured and unstructured data, like you called out, tons and tons of documents. And I think all of us can see this in our daily lives as knowledge workers. You're switching between emails to documents to slide presentations to things like this webinar, and going back and forth to that, maybe query a dashboard or BI tool to get some data and marry that up against a conversation you had. So all that is really critical for any agents to start to work on core site or core types of use cases. And then the last one is one we found at Semaphore is, I think this really sort of differentiates us from a lot of those copilots out there, is we can very easily cross systems. We can cross applications. We're not just relegated to just being a copilot, let's say for your email. We can look at the emails, we can parse that, we can put that up against structured and unstructured data. We can go against the plan of the agent to get to an outcome. And that's what I think really makes us special at Semaphore.
Great, thank you. I think one of my surprises to myself, being coming from the RPA world, is how much of an unlock it has been to have the agent actually being able to natively understand these complex documents. You mentioned, Tom, here, previously impossible to automate is one of these categories that we've been thrown at. Basically, our customers said, well, we tried this for 2 years, we couldn't figure it out. Here, go solve it for us. And many times the unlock has been the ability for the agent to actually understand these complex documents, structured, semi-structured documents that have been just impossible to read. But one of the key sort of sleeper hits here with GenAI has been actually multimodality as well. So the agent being able to see the world similar to humans being able to see it. And so I'll continue with this here, unpacking kind of the differences as we go up in value chain from tactical use cases to strategic, how the agents can do work that, let's say an RPA bot couldn't. And there was a question actually I found in the chat. Wayne Butterfield, hey Wayne, said, essentially, what's the difference? Did we already cover it? What's the difference between an RPA bot and an agent? You could break this down in many ways, but I think it comes down to the planning and execution capabilities. So in an agent, the core orchestration mechanism isn't code that's predefined, is the agent itself that reasons and plans and executes the work. So orchestration happens through AI. And so kind of on the bottom of the pyramid, from on the tactical side, we have a lot of repetitive routine work on bespoke enterprise apps, bespoke enterprise workflows. So one thing that we are not saying in this agentic world is RPA is gonna go away. No, I think there's still gonna be a place for RPA in the world of agents, and it's this repetitive routine work, data entry work, for instance, scraping work, that's kind of tactical in many ways, but there's a lot of it. So you necessarily don't want to put an agent to say insert data into 10,000 forms every day, all day. Eventually, maybe yes, as the cost of compute comes down, as this gets kind of cheaper and cheaper to execute and easier to build. So the burden of actually doing it drag and drop or coding it into an automation it becomes so high that compared to the ease of describing the work to an agent, that you just end up doing it with an agent. Chatbots, copilots, RAG applications, even, they have provided a lot of value, and that's a lot where the early effort in GenAI went. The way I think about copilots, for instance, is that they tend to work on these standardized problems that are sort of same across multiple companies, typically inside enterprise applications, inside platforms. So you might be doing things like transcribing meeting notes, recommending email replies, retrieving and summarizing and finding information. That's very useful, but typically sort of generic enough work that the same copilot can work across every company out there pretty much. Whereas agents, you really have the power to work on work that's unique to you. So if you're, let's say, an insurance company that would be processing claims, that's the type of work that really makes your company you, and not something where somebody can come just from the outside and say, hey, here you go, here's an agent that will do this better than you can do it. Or we can also approach like really complex knowledge work that we haven't been able to do before. We have done a lot of invoice reconciliation workflows with RPA bots, and those typically, when implemented right, have worked great. But now we are seeing with agents, we can address some reconciliation workflows that are much more complex than we could ever automate with RPA bots. So just the level of complexity goes up, and the value of a individual use case. And one other way to think about different categories of use case before we jump into one example here is through these three buckets. I like telling this to people when they start discussing use cases, because it kind of puts them into different perspectives. One is to focus on stuff that saves money or gains more efficiency. So that would be things like, that invoice reconciliation that was mentioned, or onboarding a new employee, customer support work. So it's really just trying to take out cost, trying to gain efficiency. And that's great. But I think what we're gonna end up doing a lot with AI agents that we couldn't do with previous generation technologies is go into the next category, which is protect from cost. So this would be compliance work and regulatory compliance. Really something that's proactive detection and mitigation of risks and losses. So you would be talking about fraud detection, anti-money laundering, risk assessments, insurance claim validation, etc. This work typically requires knowledge workers. It is more nuanced. It requires understanding broader context of the work. So this is great area for AI agents, and I expect to see a lot coming out of this area. And then the third area would be growing your business. So top line growth, new business opportunities, gaining more agility into the business, being able to recover and react to changing circumstances in the market. So this would be things like, actually, I didn't list specific use cases here because they are very delicate. When I've heard this come through, I've dealt them with sort of discretion. I don't want to give out people's new business ideas away. So, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to creatively expand your business through agents as well, and we're gonna see that category grow over time. But generally, ending up with new business opportunities, new products, new services, better customer experiences, better customer outcomes.
Yeah, and I think where we've been focused a lot at Semaphore, and probably based on our past, Antti, like from the RPA side and me from the big data, a lot of that was probably, things that were either more straightforward to automate. For me, it was more sort of after the fact analysis, even at scale. So both really important things. What I'm finding is most of the stuff that we're getting engaged on here at Semaphore is very close to the operational systems. So what folks are asking us to build agents for, and essentially the early customers we're working with, are things that are key and core to folks' business, right? Close to those operational systems, close to the transactions, close to the customers even. So that's been something that's been very different that I've seen from essentially my past in data, where you're doing things after the fact, to folks want the agent very close to the action, so to speak.
Yeah, this typically the work is very urgent. It has to be done right now, rather than, yeah, we'll deal it in a batch process somewhere down the line. So it's kind of things that happen real time often. And so, okay, let's get into the demo itself. Tom, you know this use case personally. We've anonymized all the information here, so we can talk about it. But please explain through, like, what is the use case that we're gonna show here? What's the problem? And let's go through the solution before I actually show the demo. I have a few slides coming after this.
Absolutely. So yeah, so just like you said, this is one of our early design partners. They've been absolutely fantastic. And so I feel grateful that we could talk about this. The thing we're working on is they have a team of analysts that are manually looking at very complex invoices, which like we just mentioned, are very key and core to their business, dealing with some of the natural gas pipelines they work with. So each analyst is assigned a bucket, essentially, of these very complex and custom invoices that change over time. You know, they go through, they have to build a very manual pivot table, do all the reconciliation basically by putting them side by side on their screen. And it leads just to dealing with a ton of complexity. And just like Antti mentioned, there's a settlement date that arrives every month and they have to be done by then. I was talking to one of the gentlemen who's been absolutely awesome to work with. He said just the other day, a really, really complex invoice came in terrible shape, and he only got through 2 or 3 in a single day, and now he's totally backlogged for the rest of the month. He's only got 5 business days to finish, so he's totally frustrated. Was super excited about some of what we just built with the agent. So that feels really good when we can give somebody time back and they can actually go through and get more of their work done and feel like they accomplished more throughout the day. So just one of these invoices could have taken up to 3 hours just to get to the point of setting up for the analysis. So what we went out is we went out and built an agent with the team. It was a totally collaborative effort. The first thing we did is go out and build a semaphore runbook. That's our natural language construct to define an agent. You don't need to do any code or anything like that. And I think Antti will walk you all through that. The second thing is we built some actions. Those are really the hands and the feet for our agents here at Semaphore. Essentially go and get that enterprise context, go call those enterprise systems and follow that process. And lastly, essentially take action against the customer's data set. So, is the invoice within the tolerance that's allowed? Does it match the amounts, and so on and so forth? So that's what the agent does today.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about complex invoices, I've seen these invoices, and I've been in the industry long enough to know when it's complex. And we're talking about at times more than 100 pages of invoice for one invoice, and data spanning across multiple pages. Actually, we couldn't find any solution on the market that would be able to read that type of invoice. So, of course, outside of the one that we built to be able to read it, and the fact that they have 500 to 600 different unique vendors that each have a unique formula to the invoice itself. So that's not really feasible that we would train a model to understand every individual single invoice one at a time. The agent needs to be able to understand them all. And so that was part of the challenge. I think the team solved it beautifully. We won't go into the tech itself here, but for people who have struggled with this kind of workflows earlier, it's something that's now possible with agents.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been incredible to have a partner like this to be able to work. And as we've kind of built some of the document intelligence service that'll be included in the product coming soon, just like you said, it's really great, and they're super excited to use it. So going back a bit to the manual process today, just to highlight this for the demo. So we basically get this invoice in, the analyst has to go through, unpack that, build some pivot tables, do some of that line by line, like reconciliation, see where the issues are, comparing a lot of totals, doing a lot of things manually. And then, as you can imagine, like you said, I mean, these can be tens of pages, if not more, like up to the 100. This is a very tedious and complex task that is very strictly time bound. So, they need to get it right. They need to get it right fast, and then they have to move on. So this is what presented the big challenge today.
And now I'm just switching over to we saw there the as is, or the manual process here, where the human is going through the invoice every step of the way, and then the agent solution itself. Maybe you can explain how it looks like done through an agent. And now we're talking about a worker type of agent, right?
Yeah, and I think this is where it gets really exciting. So we've been able to essentially get that invoice, right? So we have an email. The agent will open the email, parse through it, get the data, get the invoice. We'll step through each of those lines, comparing the totals, and actually seek out those discrepancies. And then it'll present those discrepancies back to the analyst if there's an error or if there's something that needs to notify them. If the discrepancies aren't there, if the amounts tie off, it'll actually go ahead and document its work. It'll save that in the system and it'll move that to the approval queue. So what the goal is and what we're seeing in early testing with this design partner is that we're able to handle a lot of these, and that we're going to be able to provide a significant time savings, which is, I think, what we can get into next.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we have been able to run through this in parallel with the manual process and already collected some of the results. So maybe Tom, talk through the results before we actually show how this works in live.
Yeah, so the outcome has been incredibly fantastic. And again, thank you to the team if they do see it, that they've been a great partner to work with. And so so first off, we've improved the accuracy. And that's really by being able to use the system to really start to not only go through the process, but find areas that we could possibly improve the process, improve the formatting, and find things over and above what could have been found in the past. So that is super exciting that we could not only do the process, but possibly improve it. Just from a time saving standpoint, some of these that took 3 hours took about 42, 43 seconds to process by the agent. Huge savings. And this is one of many teams doing this type of work at our design partner. And then the third one is really probably what I would say is the most exciting piece of this now is we're starting to talk about other parts of the process. Like once it's done, they want to be able to contact the different vendors they're working with. They want to be able to send that data. And since we've already generated the discrepancies, we already have the contact information. It's just a click of a button or just add something to the runbook and we can do that. We want to be able to start to capture different various and types of data into their data warehouse, into their current BI tooling, so they can start to learn, hey, is this vendor constantly sending us emails with tons of discrepancies? Is this person or like, is this entity something that we need to reach out? We need to push for some type of correction that will save us downstream time. So tons and tons of new ideas coming out of just this one agent use case. So I'll be more excited to work with them.
Yeah, it has been truly exciting to see how showing one use case and the other the possibility and what the agents can do. We've seen this time and time again now. It spreads to other people in the organization. Everyone raised their hand. Can I try it as well? And I think this is how we gonna end up in a situation where every team, every knowledge worker will have agent or multiple agents that they supervise working on their domain, and people will be up level to supervising agents, and then only manually go in and do the sort of harder work of judgment calls of maybe correcting the agent's planning or whatever they need to do to make sure that the agent keeps on track. So now I'm gonna jump in. I see some Q&A already coming in. Please add. There's a lot of stuff in the chat. I will go through the chat once done with the demo. But also, if you have like specific questions, to add them into the Q&A so we can pick them up from there. And so to show this use case, I'm gonna jump into Semaphore AI Studio. So this will be the place where you go and build an agent. This is a desktop app. There was a question in the chat, where does Semaphore agents run? How do you build them? You would build them through Semaphore AI Studio on your desktop, and then upload them to our control room and workroom, which sits in the customer VPC for operating. So here, there's actions which allow you to connect the agents to your enterprise apps and systems, and of course data. And then agents that we're gonna jump into here is where you define build new agents or build them from templates. So we're just gonna go to the energy invoice reconciler agent and start working with it. So this would be a conversational agent. And as we are in the build mode, you see all the configuration, the runbook of the agent, which is the instruction set of the agent here on the side. I won't unpack that in detail. That's going to be spared for later webinars. But on a highest level, runbook is where you define the work of the agent. So that's defined in natural language. It's not coded, it's not programmed. and actually the business process experts working on this process can go in and modify the runbook of the agent. And then we have some actions here that tie it up into the business apps. So to start off with, I can ask, okay, so what can you do? And so the agent will respond. It can do reconciliation, discrepancy calculation, detailed line item reconciliation, and so forth. And so since this is a conversational agent, I'll just ask it to fetch one invoice that's already in the database and go through the reconciliation. Now, in the real deployment, the agent would sit on top of an inbox and just pull documents as they come through. So the human user wouldn't go through these steps. And so it said that it used a few actions to get the invoice and get its data. And it says that, hey, you have a discrepancy of $11,802. Would you like to go through a detail reconciliation? Yes, let's do that. And now the agent actually pulls up the data again and goes line by line, comparing this against the ERP system in the background, pulling the data from that system, comparing it to the invoice, and then finding all the line items where we have discrepancies, and then it'll pull it up in a table here where the business process expert actually knows how to look at this and find this matching. And then we have suggested some next steps. So to really highlight how the agent does its work, what I'm going to do next is I'll turn on the reasoning tab here and update the agent. So what I'm doing is I'm telling the agent to actually show how it's doing the reasoning for the particular work that we want to complete. So we have a tab called reasoning here in Studio, and I can say, hey, can you reconcile now another invoice for me? And this is an invoice that will actually reconcile fully, but we see that the agent goes through building the plan, fetching total amounts from PDF, from the background system, calculating discrepancies, etc., using actions. And now, true to a demo, we get a demo effect, which I have not seen ever, but we already got to see the reasoning here in the background. So this is kind of a walkthrough of how an agent kind of thinks in the background, formulates the plan, and then executes the work accordingly. Interesting.
Yeah, I think is that first part, the first one you showed there, Antti, just to kind of map that back to our story, that first piece to get to that table that we showed in about the 40 something seconds, that's the piece that would take about 3 hours to do in a manual process. So this is what's been super exciting, is being able to do that so quickly, being able to get that into a format that's shareable, into a format that we could quickly get into an email, into an Excel file, and pass that along for further analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that detailed breakdown would be the first thing that the human user sees. Hey, there's a discrepancy. Here's the detailed breakdown. And honestly, I think, Tom, we should, before we launch any product, we should do a public demo about it to get all the bugs out, because that's an error that I've never seen on this build of the studio. So that's fun. And so this is to show what it would look like in the workroom. So this is actually the business user's view, not the studio view, but the business user's view, where you would have had the invoice come in, the agent has gone through the reconciliation process, getting totals from invoice, then comparing and finding, there's a discrepancy found here first, then doing the line item by line item breakdown, and then sending a notification email, and then flagging this work item as escalated. Now, this would be in your inbox or in your workroom inbox, and then you can jump into this conversation. Now it turns into a conversational mode, and then you can pick up next steps like notifying sender of invalid invoice. So this is going from the fully conversational, manually driven process into something that's on autopilot in the background all the time. So that concludes the demo. Tom, anything as a wrap up here? I think this has been really interesting to build out with the customer, and just seeing the reactions and the results has been really rewarding, at least to me as a co-founder here, to see the hard work come to reality.
Yeah, like absolutely. I would second that. I mean, I think being able to have a front row seat to folks that are kind of using agents and building agents with us for some of their most critical, core, and complex processes that power their business. It's not something you can just go and get an off the shelf tool or agent to do, right? These are things that make your business yours. And if you were able to just buy a tool, then we would all go get it. And that would be great. We could all have businesses. So, I think that's what's been so eye-opening to me, is just what the agent can accomplish. And I think that's the first one, is just the complexity we can go after. The second one that's been profound to me is just how fast it moves. The agents, the technology, the LLMs are just incredible. If you haven't looked at generative AI since Chat GPT 3.5 or so, it's time to take a very serious look. These can add a ton of value to your day. I use agents. I have 10 to 12, like in my studio at any given minute. I'm constantly interacting with agents throughout my day, both internally and externally. So I think it's super exciting, and I couldn't be more excited for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Things really move fast, and I think some people have asked me about the cost of running an agent and the token cost, and my default answer today has been that expect these things to just get cheaper and better over time. The During the time that we have been doing this, I think it has gotten like 10 times better and 10 times cheaper already. So that seems to be the trend to go. Um, so good. I am looking at the Q&A here, and I'm also looking at the webinar chat. Let's see. Let's take first question. David is asking, does the system run locally, cloud, and or hybrid? Tom, you've answered this probably a few times. You can take it.
Yeah, sure. So we have the Semaphore.ai Studio, which is where we would build. That's a single binary that you can download and build locally so that you can access all your systems that are within the corporate enterprise with the firewall. All of the pieces we showed on the worker agents, the chats, the prompts, every interaction, that actually gets deployed within your cloud VPC. So all that data stays yours. We can't access it. It's actually instantiated with your keys, with your credentials. Quite simply, the only thing we can see in our management tier, which is known as the control room, is things like the metadata. We know that agent XYZ is doing something. It's made a certain amount of calls. But again, we can't see the data. So all the data is protected. All the prompts are protected. Everything you do with the LLM is essentially built in your enterprise and adhering to your policies from day one.
Awesome. The next question here from Rahul has been also around security and confidentiality. So we basically designed the platform here with that as first principle in mind. Everything happens within the customer VPC, and typically against the customer's own LLM that they provide. So nothing leaves their VPC, and nothing gets logged to us. That has really been, I think, one of the right choices to go with, rather than trying to build it as a SaaS solution, or like on the other end of the spectrum would be an on-prem solution. Hitting that middle VPC type of deployment has been great for us, and we've been able to pass some really rigorous infosec scrutinies in matter of weeks, and that's not a small feat coming from an enterprise software background. And then Sumesh has a few questions here. I'll just try to summarize them through so we can break down the questions in the chat as well. First question would be around the local LLM support. So do we support local LLMs? Again, we've typically seen that customers, enterprises will have their preference of an LLM provider, whether that's Azure, whether that's Bedrock, where they might have models like Claude 3.5, GPT 4.0, or then Llama 3.1. So with those sort of cutting edge models, we work across all of them, and using the customer's own provider. And then for the development, I'm looking forward to support Ollama-based models as well locally, so you can do the development through Studio fully local. And the Ollama guys are a great team. Really like working with them, so it will be great to have that in the studio itself, so you can run the studio in, well, airplane mode, basically, fully contained. And observability tools, do you also have observability tools in place? We support a few out of the box, just local configuration. So Langsmith would be one. Also know the team behind that product, great team to work with. And now we have got a lot of requests to support OpenTelemetry-based tooling. So those have been added to the platform as well. So OpenTelemetry seems to be a preference among the enterprise, and we've added support for a number of those providers. And then a question about open source. Can I try it and build it on my local machine? We are building Semaphore on an open source stack, so the core runtimes and the action frameworks and all that is open source. And so there's actually an SDK that allows you to build an agent fully within VS Code, and then also export that into the studio. And then again, of course, control room, workroom are enterprise platforms which act accordingly. So we help our customers roll them into their own VPCs and operate them. But those are cloud production, not as much open source as the actually built tools. And so let's go into the chat itself. Tom, I'll let you take this one. How long does it take on average to set up an agent to perform these unique tasks?
So typically our way that we engage today is we'll work with a customer through any type of discovery session, could be a few hours to a half day. Based on that, we'll build out the first agent and runbook within no more than a day or two to get it to probably 80% of the way there and tweak it. So it's like most of the engagements we've shared with you all today have typically spanned maybe a month or month and a half. So 4 to 6 weeks of time to get a fully working agent within kind of a pre-prod type environment.
Mm-hmm. And the actions themselves, those are something that we have in a gallery. So we have a action gallery that we host and grow ourselves. And then each customer will typically grow their own or collect their own action gallery internally. And so the additional question here is that can we add pre-approved actions once the agent has been trained? So yes, you can add actions that the agent needs after the agent has been built. So just adding that capability to an agent is really easy. Matter of fact, there was one of our team members mentioned that he did a customer demo on a particular agent, and the customer said, "Man, this is great, but I wish this agent could produce that outcome in an Excel file." Well, we happen to have an Excel action, so let's just add that to the agent and ask it to do it. And sure enough, it did it. So that's as easy as it can get from time to time. What are your tool advantages over tools like Flowwise? Would that be, I would have to Google Flowwise, but if that's something that I think it is, which would be a low code tool to build LLM apps, I think the key advantage would be that we allow business users to define the agent's work through English natural language instead of having to program it. But I need to check Flowwise to make sure that I'm talking about the right stuff. But really, I think that the future of defining agents is gonna be in natural language. That's how we're gonna define them, not doing drag and drop, not building graphs, not doing like state machines. There's one question here in the Q&A still. How good platform is on the security compliance like SSO and IAM and others? Maybe Tom, as I look through the other questions here, I'll let you take the enterprise security question.
Yeah, so we integrate with your single sign-on. So we're not trying to replicate or create another silo that you have to manage new policies, new groups, new users. We want to connect to your, essentially your provider that you're using across the enterprise, because like we've demonstrated, the agent is really acting as almost yourself with these systems. So a lot of those policies, those security things, we want to go through and inherit those and not have to recreate new ones. And because we know that can just open new holes, and that's not a very secure way to do it.
Great. So a lot of questions here still in the chat as I scroll up. Some of them I tried to answer already in the chat. But there's some questions around can you get a sandbox where to try it out and evaluate and then present to your team? That's Studio. So Studio will become eventually available for folks to download. And so you can download Studio on your laptop, Windows, and Mac, and just start building runbooks, connecting actions, building your own custom actions to your agents, and then show them working on your local environment to impress your colleagues and to show what's possible in your business. That's the intention. And we intend to make it as easy as possible for people to jump on board with Studio, just single download, no fidgeting around with configuration or Docker images or any of that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the question from Joe. Hey, Joe, on the more specific examples, I think kind of what Auntie said, we want to be really conscious of the folks we're working with. And like we said, a lot of it's key and core to some of their businesses, empowering them, but we're working across things to manage any type of logistical components that are key and core to folks, to working with different types of data and case summaries across banks and health, to, like we've showed here, working on some invoices within the energy sector. It's really those key core processes that folks have engaged us on, that they want to have agents at the core of their business. So it's really been those. What we haven't really built and really aren't focused on are things like creating blogs, summarizing emails. We think there's lots and lots of tools for that. And really Semaphore, and what we've demonstrated, I think, is our ability to get that really complex core type of use case within a business.
Great. And now we're coming up on time. There's some questions about learning, getting started. We're going to be rolling out some public launches in the coming months, so stay tuned for that. Also, hopefully more webinars coming up, so you can follow those. But, not too distant future, you're going to be able to get your hands on Studio and start building agents yourself, and also have access to learning resources there. So I'll stop the share here for everyone. Thank you. It was a really engaging session here with a lot of questions, a lot of participants here. Really happy for the interactivity here. So we'll wrap it up, and you're gonna have one question left. So you're gonna have the material, the deck, and the video in your email inbox later. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.